Notification came at 6:47 in the morning. I was still in bed, still half asleep, one arm thrown over my eyes to block out the early light coming through the curtains. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I almost ignored it. I almost rolled over and went back to sleep. I didn't. I picked it up because I thought it might be work. I'm a paralegal at a small firm downtown, and sometimes the attorneys send things early, before they even get their coffee, because their brains don't have an off switch. So I unlocked my screen expecting a case file or a deposition time, and instead I saw a bank alert, a transaction alert. 2,340 money savings account at 6:43 a.m. I sat up so 43 a.m. I sat up so fast the blanket fell off the bed. I stared at that number for a long time. $2,349. That wasn't a random amount. That wasn't some subscription charge I'd forgotten about or an auto payment gone wrong. That was a very specific number. That was, and I knew this immediately, in my bones, the way you know something before your brain has even caught up. Exactly what my brother owed on his truck payment. His name is Derek. He's 24. He's lived at home with my mother his entire adult life, except for the 8 months he tried to make it work with a girlfriend in Tucson, which ended badly and expensively and which I also helped pay for. I'm 29. I've had my own apartment since I was 22. I've had my own bank accounts, my own car, my own health insurance, my own everything since the day I graduated and got my first real job. I say all that not to brag. I say it because in my family, the fact that I was independent was treated less like an accomplishment and more like a resource, like I'd built something and now it was available for everyone else to draw from. My mother has a term for it. She calls it helping the family. She's been using it my whole life. I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hands, and I thought about that phrase, helping the family. Then I called my bank. The customer service rep confirmed what the alert said. A withdrawal had been made. I asked how. She told me it had been processed through the joint access that was on the account. I closed my eyes. When I was 22 and just starting out, my mother had asked me to add her as a secondary account holder on my savings. She said it was just in case. Just in case something happened to me and someone needed access. Just in case there was an emergency. I was 22, and I trusted her, and I thought that's what families did. I said yes. That was 7 years ago, and she had never touched that account. Not once. I had actually forgotten she was on it. I hadn't forgotten anymore. I thanked the rep and hung up. Then I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, and I thought very carefully about what I was going to do next. I could feel the anger rising, that particular kind that lives in your chest and makes your hands shake. But I didn't let it out. Not yet. I needed to think. My mother knew my savings account balance because I'd told her about it 6 weeks earlier during a phone call where she was asking about Derek's truck situation. She'd asked if I had any money set aside, and I told her yes. I had about $2,800 in savings, and I was trying to leave it alone as an emergency fund. I had said that. Emergency fund. Those exact words. I knew what had happened. She had used her secondary account access to transfer money to Derek's truck payment. She hadn't asked me. She hadn't texted me. She'd woken up before 7 a.m., and she'd made a financial decision for me and done it quietly, and I wasn't supposed to find out until she was ready to tell me, probably framed as something she'd done for the family, something that helped all of us, something I should be grateful for. I called my bank back. I asked them to remove my mother's secondary access immediately. The rep walked me through it. It took about 4 minutes. When it was done, I changed my online banking password and my security questions. Then I called my credit card company and changed that password too. Then I called my phone provider and added a PIN to my account so no one could make changes without it. I did all of that before 8 in the morning. I was still in my pajamas. I hadn't even had coffee yet. Then I got in the shower and I thought about what I was going to say. I want to tell you something about my mother, because I don't want her to sound like a cartoon. She's not a bad person. She's not cruel. She grew up without much, and she raised 2 kids, mostly alone after my father left when I was 11 and Derek was 6. And she worked hard and she kept us fed and the lights on. And I love her. I do. But somewhere along the way, she developed this belief that money inside the family wasn't really personal property. It was shared. It was a pool. And because I was the one who consistently had some, I was the one who consistently had some. I was the one who consistently got drawn from. Derek's car insurance after his second accident. Derek's security deposit when he tried to move to Tucson. Derek's phone bill 3 months in a row when he quit his job at the warehouse. My mother's heating bill one winter when she said she was short. A loan that became a gift became something we didn't talk about. I paid all of it, every time. Because saying no felt like cruelty and I didn't have the language yet for what was actually happening to me. I was starting to develop that language. I drove to my mother's house after work. I hadn't called ahead. I had gone through my workday like normal, filed motions, answered emails, ate my lunch at my desk, and on the drive over, I kept the radio off and I practiced what I was going to say. Not because I was nervous, because I wanted to be clear. She was in the kitchen when I got there. Derek was on the couch, playing something on his phone. He looked up when I came in and said, "Hey," and went back to his screen. My mother looked up from the stove and smiled like nothing had happened. "You should have called," she said. "I would have made extra." "I'm not here to eat," I said. She heard something in my voice. She turned more fully toward me. "What's wrong?" "I got a bank alert this morning," I said. "At 6:47, a withdrawal of $2,340 from my savings account." The kitchen was quiet. Derek had put his phone down. My mother wiped her hands on a dish towel, and her expression shifted into something I recognized. The look she got when she was about to explain something to me like I was 12 years old and missing the obvious point. "I was going to talk to you about that," she said. "Derek's payment was due today, and he didn't have it, and they were going to repossess." "I know what it was for," I said. "So, you understand. I understand that you took money from my account without asking me." She set the dish towel down. "I didn't take it. It's a family account." "It's my account," I said. "You're listed as a secondary holder because I trusted you in an emergency." This wasn't an emergency. This was Derek's truck payment. Derek's truck that he bought, that I did not co-sign. Derek stood up from the couch. "Hey, don't make this about me. It is about you," I said, and I looked at him directly and I kept my voice completely level. "It's about the fact that I have been covering your expenses for years and no one has ever asked me whether I was okay with that. It's just been taken. And now money has been literally taken out of my account without my permission, and I'm supposed to understand." My mother's voice went up slightly. "I raised you to help your family. That's not something you throw in people's faces." "I'm not throwing anything," I said. "I'm telling you what happened. You accessed my account and moved my money without asking me. I found out from a bank notification." "I was going to tell you when?" I asked. "After Derek's payment processed? After the deadline passed? When was the right moment you'd planned for that conversation?" She didn't answer. I had thought about this part on the drive over. I knew she wouldn't have a good answer because there wasn't one. She had done it the way she'd always done it. Quickly, quietly, as a fait accompli, so that by the time I found out the money was already gone and there was no practical way to undo it, and I would be left choosing between making a scene about money that was already spent or letting it go. She had counted on me letting it go. I wasn't going to let it go. "I've already had your access removed," I said. "I did it this morning." Her face changed. "You did what?" "I called the bank and removed you from the account. I also changed all my passwords and added security to my other accounts." I paused. "You won't be able to do this again." The kitchen had gone very still. Derek was looking at the floor. My mother was looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen before, something between anger and, I don't know, shock maybe, like she genuinely had not expected this. "I can't believe you," she said quietly. "After everything I've done." And there it was. There was the phrase, "after everything I've done." I had heard that phrase so many times in my life that it had almost lost meaning. But standing there in that kitchen, I felt it clearly for the first time. What it actually was, it was a ledger. It was a debt she was calling in. Everything she had ever done for me, every sacrifice and hard year and grocery run and permission slip signed, was being presented as collateral for whatever she needed now. I had loved her through hard years, too. I had sent money when she needed it. I had said yes when I should have said no, and I had let things go when I should have drawn lines, and I had done all of that because I loved her. But that wasn't on the ledger. That was just expected. I love you, I said. I want to be clear about that. But what you did this morning was not okay. And the pattern it's part of is not okay, and I need it to stop. She turned back to the stove. Go home, Natalie. Natalie. My name in her mouth like a closed door. I went home. I want to tell you the hardest part wasn't the money. The hardest part was the drive home. Sitting at a red light on Mercer Street, the radio still off, thinking about how I had said everything I'd planned to say and done everything I planned to do, and it had felt like nothing. No resolution. No acknowledgement. She just turned back to the stove. I had expected something to shift and nothing had. I made dinner and I did not cry, and I went to bed and I stared at the ceiling for a while. I thought about Derek's truck. I thought about the $2,340. I thought about the secondary account holder form I'd signed at 22, like it was nothing, like trust was the same as protection. I had a lot of thoughts. What I did not do was transfer the money back into my account from Derek, because I had already asked my bank about that. The transaction had processed. The truck payment was made. The money was gone. There was a path where I pursued it legally, but it would have been complicated and expensive, and I wasn't ready for that yet, so I left it. What I did instead was make a list. I have a habit of making lists when I'm overwhelmed. It's a paralegal thing, or maybe it's just a me thing. I opened my notes app and I listed every financial transaction I could remember that had gone from me to my mother or Derek in the last 5 years. I had records of some of it. Bank statements, Venmo history, a couple of texts where I'd confirmed amounts. Others I was working from memory. The total was not small. I looked at that total for a long time. Then I put my phone face down on the coffee table and I watched television until I fell asleep on the couch, which I never do. And when I woke up at 2 a.m. with a crick in my neck, I felt oddly calm. I knew what I was going to do. I spent the next 3 days being very quiet about it. I didn't call my mother. I didn't text Derek. I went to work and I came home and I ate dinner and I went to bed and I made phone calls during my lunch breaks. One call was to my bank's fraud department. I spoke to a specialist about whether what had happened, an authorized secondary account holder making a withdrawal without the primary holder's knowledge or consent for a purpose the primary holder had explicitly stated the funds were not for, constituted anything actionable. She was careful and measured and said she couldn't give legal advice, but she could tell me that there were options and that I should document everything. I documented everything. Another call was to a lawyer. Not one of the attorneys at my firm, that would have been strange, but a woman I'd met at a continuing education event who had done some family financial law. I asked her a few questions about the secondary account holder situation. She was interesting. She was helpful. She said some things I wrote down. The third call was to my aunt, my mother's older sister, who lives in Portland, and who has watched my family from a careful distance for 20 years, and who, when I was 18, told me in a quiet moment at a Thanksgiving gathering that I should always have accounts my mother didn't know about. I hadn't understood what she meant then. I understood now. My aunt listened to everything. Then she said, "She's done this before. Not to you. But she's done it." I asked her what she meant. She told me. It took a while. I won't go into all of it because it's not entirely my story to tell. But what I learned in that phone call was that my mother had a pattern that went back further than I knew, and that I was not the first person in my family to have the experience of trusting her and finding that trust used against me. My aunt had managed it by distance, by keeping her finances completely separate and never discussing money with my mother, and maintaining a surface relationship that was warm but had very clear, unspoken walls. "You're going to have to decide what you want," my aunt said, "not about the money, about the relationship. Because those are two separate decisions." I thought about that a lot. On day 4, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She said she thought we should talk. She said she knew I was upset. She said she missed me. Her voice was soft and it sounded genuine, and it probably was genuine in her way. because I don't think my mother operates with full awareness of what she does to people. I think she genuinely believes in the pool theory of family money, and she genuinely believes she was helping, and I think she was surprised and hurt when I didn't see it that way. That didn't make it okay. I called her back the next evening. I had thought about what my aunt said. I had made a decision. I'm not going to pursue any legal action, I told her. I want to be clear that I'm making that choice, but I want you to know that I spoke to a lawyer and I could. Silence. I also want to tell you what I'm going to do going forward, I said. I'm not going to share financial information with you anymore. Not balances, not accounts, not anything. If you ask, I won't answer. That's not cruelty. That's a boundary. A boundary, she repeated, like the word tasted strange. Yes, I said, and I want to still have a relationship with you. I do, but it can't be built on the assumption that my money is available to the family whenever someone needs it. I'm not an ATM. I'm your daughter, and I need you to treat me like one. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, your brother needed help. I know, I said, and when I choose to help him, I will. That's the difference. My choice. She didn't say much after that. We said goodbye. I think she was crying, or close to it, and I felt the pull of that, the old reflex to walk it back, to soften it, to say it was okay when it wasn't. I didn't follow the reflex. I said goodnight, and I hung up. I want to tell you something about the weeks after that, because I know how these stories are supposed to end. Dramatic confrontation, tearful realization, everything resolved and healed. It wasn't like that. My mother and I talked on the phone twice in the next month, and both times it was surface conversation. How are you? How's work? Did you see it's supposed to rain? Derek texted me once to say he was sorry. I appreciated that more than I expected to. Things were different. Cooler. I won't pretend that didn't hurt, because it did. But here's the thing I kept coming back to, lying awake at night. The $2,340 was gone. I was never going to get it back, not without a fight I had decided wasn't worth it. But I had done something that morning in my pajamas, making phone calls before I'd even had coffee, that I'd never done before in 29 years of life. I protected myself in real time. I hadn't waited to see what would happen. I hadn't given anyone the chance to frame it for me. I had found out something was wrong, and within an hour, I had made it so it couldn't happen again. That felt like something. My aunt sent me a text the following week. It just said, proud of you. I saved it. I rebuilt my savings over the next several months. It took longer than I'd hoped. There was a car thing and a dental thing, the way there always is. But I got back to where I was, and then past it. I opened a second account at a completely different bank, one my mother had never heard of, and I started putting a percentage of every paycheck there automatically. No secondary holders. My mother and I are okay. I want to say that clearly. We're not what we were, but we're okay. She came to visit in the spring, and we got coffee and walked around the farmer's market, and it was nice, actually. Easy. There were things we didn't talk about, and maybe there always will be. Derek got a better job. He hasn't asked me for money since. I don't know if he will again. I know what I'll say if he does. I know a lot of things now that I didn't know at 22 when I signed that form. I know that trust is different from access. I know that being a good daughter doesn't require being a bottomless resource. I know that love and money can coexist, but they need separate containers, and if someone keeps trying to pour one into the other, you are allowed to put a lid on it. You're allowed to protect what you built. That morning when I sat on the edge of my bed reading a bank notification I hadn't expected, I had two choices. I could wait to see what my mother would say, or I could act. I picked up the phone and I acted. I'm still glad I did. I thought a lot about what that morning actually cost me. Not just the $2,340 minus Sal's, though that was real and it hurt, and I want to be honest about that. I mean the other cost. The years before that morning when I kept saying yes because I didn't have the words for what was happening. That cost was harder to measure and probably much higher. Here's what I've come to understand. The way people treat you is almost always a direct result of what you've allowed. Over and over, in small moments that felt too minor to fight about. My mother didn't wake up one day and decide to take my money. She woke up one day and took my money because 15 years of smaller moments had taught her that my boundaries were suggestions. That's not blame. That's just cause and effect. What we consistently accept becomes what people consistently do. I don't say that to be hard on myself. I say it because I think it's worth naming clearly. I was not a pushover. I was a person who loved her family and didn't yet understand that love doesn't require you to make yourself smaller so someone else can take up more space. That's a thing you have to learn. Nobody teaches it to you directly. You mostly learn it the hard way, sitting on the edge of your bed at 6:47 in the morning, reading a bank notification. What I did that day, the phone calls, the password changes, the quiet, methodical work of protecting what was mine, that wasn't coldness. That was intelligence applied to a situation that emotion alone couldn't fix. I had been emotional about my family dynamics for years. Sad about them, frustrated by them, guilty about setting limits. None of that emotion had changed anything. What changed something was action. Specific, documented, calm. Action taken before I'd even had coffee. I think about Derek sometimes. He texted me to apologize and I believed him. He's not a bad person either. He's a person who was handed a dynamic from childhood and never had any reason to question it until I questioned it. That's the thing about patterns inside families. They only change when someone decides to be the person who changes them. Not dramatically. Not by burning everything down. Just by quietly saying, "This stops here, with me." My aunt was proud of me and I saved that text. But honestly, the pride I felt in myself mattered more. Not arrogant pride, the quieter kind. The kind that comes from knowing you finally did the thing you should have done a long time ago, and that you did it without cruelty, without explosion, without becoming something you weren't. I rebuilt my savings. I opened a new account at a bank my mother had never heard of. I keep growing it. No one has access to it but me. And every time I check that balance, I think, this is what it looks like to take yourself seriously. Not perfectly. Not without cost. But seriously, finally, in a way that no one can undo in the early morning hours while you're still asleep. That's the only inheritance worth passing on.